Okay, so then after Nickelodeon, you went and did Bear in the Big Blue House, or there's like
Right.
a okay. Now that's a crazy show because that's one of those shows I was too old to be watching, yet I still
Right.
watched it. I
Oh,
was
good.
what that came out 97?
90. I did the pilot in 97. Yeah,
Right.
my daughter was born when I was shooting the pilot.
Oh wow, yeah. That's awesome. Uh
Yeah.
and the idea of doing a puppet show, does this go back to your early days in New York trying to do avant-garde weird puppets or
There's some vibe for it. I did a series before. My first puppet series was something I did on my own called Twisted Puppet Theater. That's also, they have it up at UCSB and it's in that lecture I did. And it was puppets for people who hate puppets.
right.
And I went back to O'Donoghue, who hated Jim Henson and hated puppets. And I asked him if he could imagine a puppet show, what would it be? And I think he told me something like, something like beating a puppet up or something like that. I
Oh
forget.
my god.
But it was like really, I really liked it. It got a little, it was on Showtime for a bunch of, it kind of got a little cult following. You can
Mhm.
find it on YouTube sometimes. And there were just really weird puppet kind of performance stuff. Like there was this box. One of my favorite things is there was a Jack in a Box in this sort of limbo space,
Mhm.
old carved Jack in a Box with a crank. And the crank goes on da 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 da, and then the crank drops. It falls out of the box. And inside the box you hear, "Hey, hey, wait a second!" And you see the top of it jumping.
Yeah.
Let me out of here!
Nice.
And
And
there were
so
lots of kind of sick comedy stuff in there. It was great.
then you thought about doing a child show, a children's show for
Then I became more wholesome, and I
also.
thought,
Do you think
that
that was the change? Do you think having a child was a change of
I mean, my
smoothing
child.
out your edges?
Oh, having children? No, because I did Clarissa and I didn't have any kids. I
Mm,
mean, I did a lot of shows before I had kids. It's more about being a kid than
right.
having a kid, in my opinion.
Right.
But although having kids definitely made Bear a bigger, deeper experience,
Mm,
because it was definitely in sync with my parenting and my kids.
right.
And no, I got hired by Henson in an overall deal,
Mm,
and I said that they needed to do Barney right. They needed to figure out how to do a good Barney,
yeah.
and Barney did some things right. I have to say, Barney brought some interesting things to TV, like emotion, and
Hmm.
it was schmaltzy and all that stuff. But there was there was a kind of hugging going on that wasn't on Sesame Street. They don't
Hmm.
hug a lot on Sesame Street.
That's right.
They count a lot.
Yeah.
They do the alphabet. They do curriculum all the time. They
Yeah,
don't do.
like they focus on education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you can do both. And Bear did both. But anyway, and I had this idea after I did Clarissa, because when we built a set um, for Clarissa, we built basically the whole house that she lived
Mm,
on the floor of the studio. And I thought, wow, you can build a whole house. And wouldn't it be great if you could build a house? So the first idea was this big house, and it was
mhm.
even called Big House. And that sounded too much like prison, so I had to change
Yeah.
that. And then I had to figure out who lived in the big house, and then I came up with this idea of a bear, because I think bears are a natural kind of bear instead of a fakey bear.
Mhm.
And that I think little kids see adults as kind of big lumbering creatures.
Mhm.
And the first episode, the pilot was like Tutter, the
Right.
small and big. And I felt like it was a matter of civil rights for kids to be helped by adults.
Right.
And I really still believe that. Like if a little kid needs help doing something, adults are supposed to be there to do that. That's what we should do. And
Wow.
and so Bear and Tutter really were the beginning of the whole thing.
And then what was the beginning stages of designing these puppets? Did you have any hand in that or
Oh yeah, a lot. But I didn't design it.
right.
I worked with the most talented puppet designer I've ever met, and I think one of the most talented puppet designers, period, a guy named Paul Andraco.
Mm-hmm.
He was working for Henson at the time. And, basically we spent a lot of time talking about here's the thing that people forget about Bear, and I wish it was on now and people could see.
Right.
Barney wasn't very expressive.
Yeah. His
He,
eyelids would flap. I think that was it, right?
yeah, and he had
Yeah.
these flippy
Mm-hmm.
arms, and he didn't really talk to the camera as much as he went like,
Right.
and he was infantilized. And I wanted to build a creature that could talk to you and look into the camera, that didn't have ping pong balls for eyes,
Yeah.
and whose face could be as expressive, at least as Kermit, it could
Right.
really be, and he could be a bear, and he also would be physical enough that he could dance and all
Right.
this stuff. So it's basically the idea of Bear was pretty much a character that sniffs you and dances the cha cha cha. And Paul and I worked on it. I found things I liked of what I wanted him to look like, but Paul designed him. I didn't design him, but I mean it was all a collaboration
Of
in
course.
terms of what I put in and what he did. And he came up with a brilliant solution. His
Yeah.
solution was basically a hand puppet on top of a walk around body.
Mm.
That's a core solution, meaning that here's this very expressive hand as opposed to Barney
Yes.
that can really, one of the things about Kermit is he can scrunch.
Mm-hmm.
If a puppet can't scrunch, it can't be very expressive, And if it's too stiff, if it's a face and stiff, it can't do these things.
Right.
So he basically created a big head, but a bigger body. And since we were always, this is one of the most fascinating things to me, since we were always talking to camera, his head is foreshortened, right?
Mm.
His body is foreshortened. So his head is bigger. His head looks bigger than it really is to the rest of his body.
Ah.
And then he went way further. I mean, he then made sure that when you walk, the design of the same thing happened with my puppet Snook in
Yeah.
It's a Big World. The design, and in some ways, Snook has other advantages because he's even more flexible and he can lie on the ground and get up. He could do more things.
Right.
But Bear was plenty great. And Bear, he designed Bear a saddle inside so that Noel McNeil, who brilliantly played Bear, and that was the same problem with Clarissa. I had to find a bear.
Right.
And Noel was the guy, And again, Noel is in almost every single episode of every show.
Yeah.
He's always talking to camera. I mean, he's doing everything. And he's dancing without being able to see sometimes.
Right.
So he's unbelievably brilliant as a performer. And so I lost track about something about.
Was he also the voice actor as well?
Yeah, he's the voice. And so Paul built like this saddle inside so that when he walks, he has to walk like a bear, you know? And there's so many things in it. There's so many brilliant solutions in that character. And he was truly captivating. And the kind of eyes, there were these bead eyes. The funny thing about the eyes is that once my son was watching Bear and he said, "Oh my God, his eyes went out." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And then I realized that the lights on the set reflected on his eyes.
Oh.
And that's how we know somebody's alive.
Right.
Is if there's that light on their eyes.
Like a little glossiness or something to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was super cool. And the design was brilliant. It was a brilliant design. And the show was designed brilliantly too, because the show
had two stages or two.
What?
There's a living room and then there's like the kitchen, right? Or how many stages, how many things did you have to build?
Well, this is what we built. First of all, everything was built on a 4-foot tall platform. Because the puppeteers had to be able to go underneath.
Right.
And we could drill a hole in the floor anywhere.
Yeah.
And a guy could, have a puppet there. It was wild. And then we put the first floor of the Big Blue House on one side. And then we built a camera lane and put the other side of the house, the second floor. I think there's just 2 floors on the attic, right?
Right.
And on the other side. So that meant that the camera could just buzz right through walls and could go
Wow.
around anywhere it wanted.
Yeah, so it's like
And
a seamless transition from
yeah,
here.
and
Yeah.
it was a perfect. I don't mind saying I think it's a perfectly designed puppet series, and I think that there's one episode that for some reason bothers me, and there isn't a single other episode that I don't adore.
Yeah. Wait, why is the one episode bother you?
I don't know. Maybe I just thought the idea didn't ever really work.
Oh,
I don't
from
know. I
a
just thought,
story standpoint.
yeah, I just
Yeah, yeah.
never. I don't know. It wasn't anybody's fault.
Yeah.
Probably was my fault, but it was just never really.
That's one of those things where you have like a song on your album, like maybe I shouldn't have put this one on, and everyone's
Yeah,
like, "We
yeah,
love
yeah.
that song." It's like, okay,
Right,
it's just me.
exactly.
I think it's
Yeah,
just
right,
me.
right. Yeah,
like,
you
oh.
have your journal.
Yeah, because you know that show better than anyone else, and musicians, we know our
Yeah.
albums better than anyone
Which
else.
means that it's a big deal. It's a big deal that I thought the rest of the shows were really
Yeah,
good because
that's
I'm
awesome.
really critical of it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's awesome. I asked Instagram for some questions, and someone wanted to ask, what was the last day like on that show?
On Bear,
Yeah.
it was really, it was kind of sad, I guess. I'm trying to remember. I mean, we had a really difficult time with the network at the end.
Right.
And so, and every year of that show, we had to save it. Every year was going to be its last show.
Right.
And so, I mean, I was ready to move on only because my life was moving on in so many
Right.
ways, and I had by the end, I have to say the last episode we shot is from, the last 10 episodes weren't shown in a normal way. They kind of held them back and then played them and didn't really make anything of them. And it's a shame because they're beautiful shows. And the very last show was so much about my life. I didn't write it, but
Okay.
it completely was about my life at that moment. I was getting divorced. I ended up raising my kids pretty much by myself.
Right.
And the last episode, Bear takes them they think Bear's going to go away and leave them. And because I think he won a cha-cha contest, named that cha-cha.
Yeah.
And they're all worried. And then Bear reassures him, and he did win the contest. And with the contest, because they heard he was going to go on this trip, he was hoping he was going to win. They heard all the wrong stuff, right? And then he wins it, and they're all worried, and he told them not to worry. And then it turns out he was winning the contest so he could take them all to Woodland Valley theme park or something,
Yeah.
which was kind of a, frontier land,
Right.
Disney-esque thing. And the last scene, he tucks everybody in this. We converted the attic into a hotel room, kind of. He tucks everybody in. This is so much a single dad's life.
Yeah. Totally.
He's exhausted. He tucks everybody in. They go to sleep. Finally, he goes out on the balcony, and Luna was there,
Yeah.
even though he was at this theme park, and they talk, and it was very moving. I thought it was
Wow. That's amazing. Bear in the Big Blue House is on Disney Plus right now.
great. Not yet.
Oh,
Everybody has to write and call and demand that it be on
Really?
Disney Plus. It's
okay. Yeah.
crazy.
We can get that. We can get that going. We can get that
Yeah,
started.
Book of Pooh is on Disney Plus,
That's right. I saw that.
but not Bear. And Bear just so needs. It looked several times that we were going to do some again, or do a new way, or do a different one, but it hasn't happened. Bear really should be. I mean, people just adore Bear.
Oh yeah, my older sister would be very excited. She's gonna be very excited for this episode. I can tell you that.
Oh, that's cool.
We're both way too old to be watching that show. I'm not kidding.
But,
Like,
that's been true of all my shows because they're really, they're authentically in a niche, and then everybody responds to it.
Clarissa felt like I was too young to be watching this show, but I'm watching
To
it.
what?
I was like maybe too young to be, because it felt
Young,
like pretty teenagey show, and I was still like
yeah,
8 years old or something. I was like,
right.
oh man. Oh, somebody else asked about a guitar. Someone made a guitar for Bear in the Big
Guitar?
Blue House.
Yeah, I have it. Maybe I can show it to you. I
Yeah.
have. Yeah, let me get it.
Mitchell is going to get the guitar. We're gonna hear about it right now. Oh wow.
So the way this. Well, first I'll show you the guitar. So that's the logo
Wow.
for. I don't know if you can see it, but that's the logo
Yeah.
for Bear in the Big Blue House. With
Wow.
the bear in it. The house with the bear in it.
That's amazing.
And it's a beautiful guitar. It's an Ibanez custom, and the way it came about was that let me put it down so I don't mess it up. There was this guy. It's a really compelling story. There was a guy who loved the show so much in the first season, because that was both Clarissa and Bear right away connected.
Took off. Yeah.
And this guy wrote me a letter about how he watched Bear by satellite in those days. He saw the East Coast feed and the West Coast feed with his son, 2-year-old, and how it was so important to them. And he wanted to make me a guitar.
Mm.
And I said, well, that's really hard. You don't have to make me a guitar. I'll send you some stuff, He says, no, I can make you a guitar. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'm the head of Ibanez Custom Guitars. So he made this guitar, and it's gorgeous sounding. And it's because of that I ended up writing music. I ended up writing a lot of music on Bear, ended up working with, some really great musicians. And, Andrew Wyatt ended up doing a lot of music with us, and I was lucky enough to co-write some stuff with him. Me and Lady Gaga. Anyway, so when it looked like I might get to do Bear again, which was about, I think, 4 years ago, and it didn't happen, but it looked for a minute like I could. I wanted to get in touch with him because I wanted to tell him how the guitar was so great. And I also wanted to see how his kid was, And he told me, he says, well, I didn't realize at the time that he was autistic.
Mm.
And in fact, he didn't say a word until he was 7.
Wow.
And the first word he said was Bear.
No. That's amazing.
And it is amazing. And he used Bear and all the characters to describe everything in the world, like some situation. Oh, this situation is like Putter and Bear or Ojo. And he graduated high school, very high functioning, successful kid. And he ended up watching Bear in multiple languages and learned other languages and stuff. It was just so, and it was the beginning of me realizing how many, in fact, I'm doing a show now about neurodiversity because so many on all my shows. I've had a great response with kids who are trans on Clarissa. I've had a great response with every kind of neurodiversity and people who were abused who felt protected by Bear.
Right.
I mean, Bear really resonates with people's inner emotions, and he's a protector. The big idea I had was that I felt like Barney and Big Bird and Elmo, they were all infants. They were infantilized. They were all, and that there were no, besides Mr. Rogers,
right,
there were no protectors of little kids. And why don't we have shows with protectors instead of just bigger kids? And my joke used to be, if you were in a fight and you're a kid, would you want Barney, Big Bird, Elmo, or Bear on your side?
Yeah, that's true. You want Bear. That's so crazy. That's
Yeah. So
amazing. Like you don't realize when you're doing something, you're just thinking, "Oh, we're doing a show. I think people will like it," but you don't realize the effect it can have on anyone who just tunes in and watches. The same thing with music.
well,
You
it's your
don't you
job,
don't.
it's just like your music, your job is to do the deepest thing you can to
Yeah.
what you're working with. I mean, some things are light, some things are heavy, some things seem light but are heavy or whatever. But your job is really always to do the deepest thing you can do.
Right. Right. That's amazing.